Hello, David.
Doug, it's so good to be back, man. Thanks for letting me get away last week. I'll tell you what, dude. The family vacay. I mean, I had plans to read, 5 or 6 books, sit on the beach, just super chill, relax. But you got to have some activities. You got to fill the day. I mean,
Activities are the key.
We played 5 rounds of mini golf. There's still mini golf, I think, across.
I think 2's my max. I'm a two mini golfer.
Well, where we go, there's 2 courses. One course has 2, and then the other one just has 1. But you can play all day for $6. You can leave and come back. I don't know what kind of psychopath leaves and then comes back, but if you want to, you can.
I mean, they're basically paying you to play golf at that point.
Right. I mean, you're just honing your craft at that point. So, we got out there, hit it around a little bit.
Hey, this is not a serious Hornets show. Welcome back to the show. We didn't do a show last week. We took a week off. David needed to recharge. I needed to recharge, to be perfectly honest, and get ready for this show. So thanks for bearing with us. And thanks for supporting us on Patreon. This is a Patreon listener-supported show. You can sign up at patreon.com/HornetsPod to help us keep making this show for you every week. We have to shout out the 2019 club. David, there have been people supporting us since 2019, which feels like 17 years ago. Raucus, Caleb H., McLay, Andrew N., and Alan S. have all been supporting us since 2019. And then David L., who has been a longtime supporter of the show. I'll tell you, he's from my hometown, G-Town, Gastown.
Yeah, baby.
Pride of Gastonia, David L., upgraded into the $5 tier. So thank you, David, for your longtime support of this show and of Hive Talk Live and of Locked On Hornets. David, I know you were on vacation, but I imagine you kept close tabs on the team that we love, the Charlotte Hornets. A lot happened this week. This is actually an eventful week for us to do a show.
Yeah, does this ever happen to you, though, when you go on vacation and you just, first of all, it usually takes me a week. So to do the unplugging and disconnecting within the 1 week, but I sometimes find myself, like, instead of watching every NBA game or catching up on everything on NBA Twitter, I don't do that. And so it takes me a little while to get back into. You ever find yourself that way? Do you have trouble unplugging or connecting?
No, I don't. I mean, I try to do that not even on vacation. I try to take a day a week just to kind of get away from it all because it's exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting keeping up with everything. I don't have a problem in terms of the Hornets. I mean, I think I enjoy watching them anywhere, on a train, in the rain, anywhere. I'll watch the Hornets.
Yes.
And they gave us some things to be excited about this week, David. And I want to start with the thing that everyone was talking about, which was Miles Bridges dunking it very, very hard. Locked On Hornets called it the baptism on Tryon, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So the Hornets come back home. We'll talk about the fact that they lost the game in a moment. We'll shelve that. But let's just focus on the good as we open up this show. Miles Bridges, the dunk on Clint Capella late in the game. It was a significant part of the game. This was not a blowout. This was not in the second quarter. This was a significant part of the game. Miles Bridges dunks it on Clint Capella. I mean, what was your reaction?
So we were watching this in the family room, actually at my parents' house, and we just exploded. I mean, my son jumped out of his chair. He couldn't believe what he saw. We were all echoing Eric Collins, and praise be to Eric Collins and Dell on the call for that one.
The perfect guy for the moment.
Yeah, really just finally ascending to their rightful lofty perch on Twitter, NBA announcer Twitter, you know. And before it was LaMelo, but now it's Miles. They're getting their due. But, I mean, Miles has had a couple of those, right? And every time you think, that you've seen just a nasty, vicious dunk, he comes up with another one. And this one is on a Clint Capella. It's a step inside the free throw line, and he cocked it all the way back. So, like, the guys at Locked On Hornets, Nod and Walker really recapped it well, but this was just ridiculous. But Doug,
Yeah.
I've got a theory.
Okay.
I think it knocked the Hornets out. I think they were so flabbergasted by the whole thing, they forgot to play any defense. The Hawks come down, hit a three, and it took a turn for the worse.
I guess that's your theory.
Well, I think I'll tell you what I love me some Eric Collins, and I'm I'm not going to have any Eric Collins slander on this show.
No,
but I think he might have jinxed it. I mean, on the broadcast, he was saying, "Why isn't the game over?" He was calling game. You can't call game.
Yeah, in the moment he was like, "Just stop it. Just stop the game. Why is it still going?" And then the three splashes in.
as Atlanta just commences their comeback victory.
Yeah.
Close game. Hornets don't lose those games. All right, wait. I'm not going to talk about it yet. I see.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to slide into the game recap. I need to talk about my reaction. So I judge the best of the best plays for the Hornets by this measure. If my reaction exceeds in volume Eric Collins' reaction, then it is the very best of the very best plays, because Eric Collins is going to elevate a medium play to a high-level play. That's the way he announces, and that's exciting for Hornets fans. But if my reaction exceeds his reaction, then I know we've got a truly special play. In fact, my reaction, this was an afternoon game, my reaction woke up producer Katie from a nap. That's how excited I was for the dunk. Here's what made the dunk special. How far he cocked back the ball, the elevation on the jump, where he jumped from, who he dunked on. Let's not forget that. He dunked on Clint Capella, who has embarrassed people at the rim more times than you can count. And instead, he got embarrassed by one Miles Bridges. And you're right. He's not only had a couple of these, he's had enough for like dunk highlight packages on YouTube. And I can't think, I would have to probably go back to like Baron Davis as like the last player that you could put a dunk package together for as a member of this franchise. Now, they've had players like Jason Richardson who have dunk packages, plenty of highlights for Jason Richardson, but he wasn't with the Bobcats long enough to assemble those dunks for the team.
Yep. I mean, and I think back to the Suns game, I saw that one in person, and he had 4 or 5 in that game alone that were electric. I mean, he had an alley-oop where he had to reach back beyond the backboard, and he slammed it home. You think about the Raptors game, he did this with 2 hands on Boucher. It's got to be Boucher, right? It's not.
It's Boucher. You're right.
Boucher, yeah. He did that on him. I mean,
it's
that's
not Boucher.
It's not Boucher either, but he did that on him, and he's a long guy as well. So look, Bridges is not afraid. I really feel like he can see it coming. When he always gets sucked towards the basket, and then he just puts those rocket launchers on. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And typically it happens from the corner. He'll get the ball in the corner, pump fake, and drive. And then some of the best dunks in Miles Bridges' history with the Hornets have come from just being in the corner, pump fake, drive, and then you've got a free lane to the rim. But what I'll say, looking back at that, remember the Suns game where he his head was above the rim, but he threw the ball in. It's sort of, this is the dunk that I don't like, and made famous by Blake Griffin. People would go nuts on these Blake Griffin dunks, and I'm like, he's just throwing it in. So that's what made this dunk special. I mean, there was hand to rim, there was gripping, there was thunder, there was lightning, everything with this dunk.
Well, you also know what's good, because when you look at the still shot, the still photo, I think there's one basically or a couple of frames in there. It's like you don't think that it should happen. You're like, well, he got fouled, or they collided in midair and they came down. He completed this dunk cleanly over Clint Capella, and there was never doubt that it was going to happen. I mean, I haven't seen someone with that force and that like extension that Miles is showing since, I mean,
Oh, say
you
it.
know,
Say it.
I'm gonna say Vince Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit different. Vince had such fluidity and a
And he
little
could
more
jump
length.
over single human beings
Yes.
with one leap. But I'll tell you why that's a good comparison, because to me there are two types of dunkers. There are your Miles Bridges and Vince Carters, and then there are your Sean Kemps and your
Mhm.
Shaqs. They're going to dunk differently. They're going to embarrass you differently. And one does it with the leaping ability, and one does it with just the sheer size, force, weight, meteor-like impact that their body makes on another body. But I mean, my God, it was crazy. And I was checking out the quotes after the game, and this is great. They asked Miles about the dunk, of course, and Miles said, quote, "Honestly, I just be jumping, man."
Right.
That's a
What else
great
can you
quote.
say? What else
That's a
can you
great
say?
quote, and I think it deserves to be on a T-shirt, David. I just be jumping, man. I mean, if jump man, if the Hornets and Michael Jordan and that brand don't take advantage of this, I think it's just going to be something that's lost to history. I would not, I want to make it not lost to history because I love that. Honestly, I just be jumping, man. I love that quote.
Let's do it. I'm surprised there has not been a T-shirt already made. Maybe there is. I haven't been searching, but T-shirts are made so fast these days. You think that dunk, especially because it's a great still picture. It's a great photo.
I'm telling you how far he had. It would. I mean, I would need to stretch just to do the imitation. Like I'm hurt. I'm feeling it right now, and Miles. No,
Yeah.
it looks effortless. It looks amazing.
I thought back to, trying to think back of Hornets dunks and Bobcats dunks that were in the same realm.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that. I want to transition to a
Okay.
new segment called Top 3 at Least. This is what I do all the time with producer Katie. It bugs her all the time. I'm always making lists. If I see something, I'm like, yes, that's top 3 at least. That's top 5 at least.
Sure.
To me, Miles, that dunk might be not only top 3 in my mind. I think it's the best dunk in Hornets history.
I think it's got to be up there. Yeah, for all the reasons we said, all the elements that went into it. If it was just like in a playoff game with 2 seconds left, maybe it's that bumps it up, but everything else is just incredible. So yeah, that's top 3 at least.
All right, so let's run through some dunks. We'll just toss it back and forth. Up on my top 3, I got to put Lord Byron Mullins, the dunk that he put on LaMarcus. I think it was on LMA. And I mean he skied from the free throw line. Don't no one will ever tell me any different. He went from the free throw line.
Off the dribble, right from top of the key, like
Right.
1 or 2 dribbles just right up. And it was like a knee in the chest. That was violent. I mean, that was vicious too.
All right, what do you got?
Well, Lord Byron Mullins was on the team when this one occurred, and I will always remember where I was when I saw this dunk. I was in Fitzgerald's, home of one of our only live shows in existence.
R.I.P. They went. They got pandemicked.
Yeah, they couldn't help it. I'm surprised they hung on that long, but God bless. MKG, in almost the exact same fashion on the exact same basket as this Miles Bridges dunk. He had a dunk his rookie year where he reached back and slammed it over. I thought it was Andre Drummond, but it was just the former Andre Drummond. It was Greg Monroe, same person, basically. Yeah. But he reached back and he slammed one that, I'm serious, if you go back and look at it, it's not quite as high as Miles, but the violence is there. And so MKG, I remember where I was. I almost flew out of my seat. I thought this is going to be such a great pick for the Bobcats. The sky is the limit.
Yep, that didn't work out. All right, I'm going to go way back and talk about Baron Davis. This was a dunk that I remembered as a kid when he got it full. It was a transition play, full steam ahead. Baron Davis, we knew he could throw it down, but he dunked on Kevin Garnett. And I swear to you, David, when he dunked it, he caught rim and his body went horizontal. Like, because just all of his momentum was so forward. He grabbed it and like his body, if you go back and look at the replay, like at one point, he's just holding the rim and the rest of his body is behind the basket horizontal. One of the most amazing athletic dunks, and Baron Davis had a lot of them. I mean, he put a couple of guys on a poster. But doing it on Kevin Garnett, I like to factor in who they dunked on, because I think that takes it to another level. Like if you dunk on somebody like Kevin Garnett, who was no slouch on the defensive end, I think that's significant.
That's great. I'm glad you mentioned that because this one was a Gerald Henderson. Now you're going to put an asterisk on this, but this is a Gerald Henderson dunk. I don't know if you remember this one. This was in LA against the
Uh-huh.
Lakers on Dwight Howard.
I
And it
don't.
was actually more of a I pulled it up before the show. It was actually more of a throwdown, but he looked
A
like
thrunk.
he looked like he hit a trampoline and went up to an extra level. And Gerald Henderson could do that every once in a while. And he got a running start on this one and caught Dwight a little bit late, I think, to turn around. And it was nice. That was a great Bobcats dunk.
I don't remember that play. Much love and respect to Gerald Henderson, who's doing a great job, by the way, on the
Who looks
booth.
younger now than he did in that.
Yeah, how's that
highlight.
work? I don't know. What's that all about? Give me some of that. But so the only play I remember from Gerald Henderson though is
when he hit that
when
lady in the
when he
face.
thrunked it on some old lady's face.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's some, I'm factoring in that, honestly. I'll count that. One of the best dunks of all time. Gerald Henderson thrunking it on a poor unfortunate soul in the stands. I want to do another Miles Bridges dunk. Rookie season, had the short hair, was versus Atlanta. So this is one of the ones that I was talking about because he spent a lot of time. I mean, he's still early in his career, but his rookie season and his sophomore season, he spent a lot of time in the corner. I mean, that's basically where he lived. He wasn't handling the ball a lot. He just sat in the corner and waited, space out the floor and waited for those opportunities. And he got one, but this was off his own miss. He missed the three-pointer. Billy Hernan-Gomez caught the rebound, and the defender wasn't looking as Miles cut to the rim. And he yammed it so hard that it made a sound reminiscent of an explosion. Like we talk about a dunk being explosive, metaphorically. This one actually made a sound that sounded like a bomb. Crazy.
Yeah, I had so much trouble thinking of anyone else because I'm so clouded by all of Miles's dunks, just like this year. So it's crazy when you go back and look at some of these. Like one of the dunk packages I saw on Twitter or somewhere had one from Summer League,
Yeah.
And so that's how early it started for Miles, which is crazy to see. But he's become, I mean, a real nightly look-in. Right, especially when you had LaMelo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are looking for him now, and I just wonder. I mean, Capella didn't care. Like he thought he was going to get a piece of that. I mean, so it's going to happen eventually, I guess.
And I don't think
know.
shot blockers care. They know the deal.
No.
And they know that nobody actually makes posters anymore. By the way, so
that's true. They sell them as NFTs that only one person can own.
No
one's ever going to see it.
Put them on a Bitcoin.
Well, McDaniels also got Capella in that game as well, I believe, on the other end of the court. I think he got one on him too. So good for him. That's not on my list though. Those are the only ones that came.
You have Zeller. Did you mention Zeller?
Oh, God Zeller. He used to throw down some vicious tomahawks when he would be running the length of the floor and just catch one of those passes and go up. It was sad. I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I was going to mention he almost had one, and
he failed to launch.
Abort.
Against the Kings, I think. Yeah, but back in his younger days, man, he used to get up because he's got such length, obviously, and once he gets up in the air, it looks like he's so high. So yeah, shout out to Cody Zeller. He's had some good dunks in the past.
Let's roll the tape back, if you can stand it, to the days of the Charlotte Bobcats. Got a couple of dunks I remember. I remember the 2 or 3 times that Kemba dunked as a Bobcat. I don't think he ever did it as a Hornet, but he got a few runaways and threw it down. And every one, if you go back and look at the replays, and every one, like, it shocked the announcers. They were just stunned that Kemba actually threw it down. Bobcats, by the way, if you remember a Kemba Hornets dunk and you have a highlight, send it to me and we'll talk about it on the next show. I'll mention it on the next show, and we'll just all revel in it together. You can do that on the Patreon page. You can do it in the YouTube comments on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH or David B. Walker on Twitter. Bobcats Heat playoff series. McRoberts had a nasty dunk on Birdman. I actually found the replay of this on the NBA YouTube accounts. And it has that like phantom cam slow motion, which I think is the one and only time the Bobcats got that kind of highlight treatment.
Yeah.
It's like the one time they used a phantom cam was McRoberts got up and yoked it on an unfortunate Birdman. And then finally, Jason Richardson, and just have to mention him because he's one of the best dunkers in NBA history. I'm sure he put someone on a poster at some point. You can find dunks but it's like his best dunking days were all in Golden State. And then strangely also in Phoenix after his Bobcats days, he kind of fell into a Bobcat dunking black hole. He just took a year off. He set
a lot of threes.
Well, that's what, he set some franchise records in terms of 3-point percentage and different things. And so, he just kind of took a year off of leaping. He was like, all right, I'm with the Bobcats. I'm just gonna stop jumping for a year, save my legs. It was a savvy move by a savvy veteran.
Well, it's nice to have. We talk about how much fun this team is, and we can talk about Miles a little bit later, I guess, as well. But it's really nice to have someone out there who can provide Twitter with conversation for an entire day and a half. I mean, there are people the next day still saying, "Man, thinking about that Miles Bridges dunk."
Yeah, and they're saying, should we add Miles to a list of players that night to night you might get embarrassed? And that's an elite list. That's an elite list of dunkers. Shaq's there. Sean Kemp was there. Guys that is just like you might get punished. It's not a guarantee, but you might get punished.
Well, you got to know where he is now. I think, especially if you're down below the basket, you got to have your feelers out there for Miles.
Okay, coming up later on the show, we will talk more about Miles because he's in the starting lineup right now. He's replacing Gordon Hayward. He's trying to replace that production that we were getting from Gordon Hayward. We'll talk about how successful he's been at that. Plus, we'll go over record and where the Hornets stand and where we think the Hornets will stand when all is said and done. Only 21 games remaining, something like that. So we're closing.
At home too.
Yeah, a lot at home. So, I mean, it's some things that are advantaging the Hornets and some things that are not. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, we've got to talk about the shoe candy. It's one of our favorite segments on the show, or at least David's, because he knows what he's talking about. Shoe ought to know.
You ought to know.
Oh, man. So shoes this week that I'm looking forward to, Doug. First of all, let me put you in the Wayback Machine. Ask you if you remember. That's right.
That's the Wayback Machine.
Do you remember a Nike basketball commercial in this must have been it wasn't the 90s. Yeah, it must have been in the aughts. It was essentially no words, but it was dribbling a basketball. It was like basketball was going to a beat. Jason Williams was in it. Rasheed Wallace was in it. There were some street ballers in it. Dribbling, it would bounce it off. The ball would go out of the frame to the next guy who would catch it in the frame. It was called Nike Freestyle, I think.
I'll give you the very short list of shoe commercials that I remember.
Okay.
It would be Michael versus Larry, the McDonald's commercial.
McDonald's, sure.
It would be the Grandmama commercials for Reebok.
Let's go on.
There was one commercial, I believe it was a Kobe Bryant commercial, where he was dribbling up the floor and like 1,000 people were trying to guard him. I'm not sure if it was Kobe or not, but I remember it was just a big player at the time, was dribbling up the floor, and there were a lot of people trying to attack him. I think that was a shoe commercial.
That's it. So no.
I think LeBron, any commercial with a puppet, I believe there was a LeBron puppet. I remember those commercials, and that's about it.
Okay, well, I'll find this out and tweet it out and share it with you on Twitter. It may jog your memory, but I bring that up because there is a streetwear brand, a fashion boutique, call it what you will, out of New York called Aimé Leon Dore, and they have put out a campaign that is reminiscent of that freestyle Nike campaign. It's basically the same thing, but they're a New York streetwear brand, and they've done collaborations with New Balance in the past that have been very popular. Last year, they did a New Balance 550, which is a low top white leather basketball sneaker that no one was asking to be retroed or brought back by any means. And they killed it with that. New Balance brought out some general releases of that as the year went on, and they're getting ready to put out a second round of that shoe this week. And for that, they've got an entire campaign that's called International Friendship Through Basketball, which I just love. I love that. I feel
warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, they put out some stuff with New Balance. Last time they did like practice shorts, jerseys, warm-ups, all this stuff. Really cool, kind of a vintage dad look vibe, but it really works. And so they recreated this Nike commercial with New York legends like Babito Garcia, Charles Oakley, I'm pretty sure Skip to My Lou is in there. And then Jason Williams, who I don't think is from New York, but
I'll
he's
look it up.
famous. But he's famous for that commercial, and of course for his basketball handling skills. So
Not from New
we'll
York. He's
yeah,
basically from the opposite of New York. He's from Bell, West Virginia.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But respect. If you're going to have somebody come in and dribble the basketball really fancy, you're hard pressed to find someone better than him. So I'll tweet that out as well. But those shoes are coming up this week via Ame Leon Dor. That's what I'm looking forward to. It's a really cool, really kind of out of the blue thing that you wouldn't expect to be super popular, but they're good looking shoes, and they're not bad priced either, Doug. So that's even better.
My shoe news. I bought a pair of Adidas Cloud Foam, just regular walking shoes. They cost about $40 on Amazon. So this is my third or fourth pair.
Yeah.
I wear them out and then buy a new pair probably once every year.
Wow. Okay.
So this would be my Adidas 4s. This would be the fourth pair that I've owned. So
right. Okay, gotcha.
Also, I watched Rocky last night because producer Katie had never seen it, so I wanted to fix that.
Whoa.
And I always forget that Rocky was training in some black and white Converse, and he was running a lot in these Converse, and I
Chuck
don't
Taylors.
know. Yeah, the Chucks. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how comfortable that would be to run in, but he was doing it and doing it well.
Well, that explains, why he couldn't his longevity and the knees and the feet and the joints. You can't train with that all the time.
Right.
I mean, imagine if today's boxers were running around in Chuck Taylors.
Where were you on that one, Mick? Like, I mean, get got some decent running shoes. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I think we're going to do a Rocky. We haven't gotten to Content Corner yet, but I think Katie is interested in enough in Rocky that we can ruin it by watching the rest of the Rocky movies.
Oh, this is great. Well, I've shown the boys Rocky, and so there was a big question I had in my mind.
Mhm.
What is the entry point for 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds?
Because not the first Rocky.
I don't. Right. That's what I think. I don't think it's 1.
Well, because people don't realize who have never seen.
Sure as hell not 2.
Yeah, if you've never seen a Rocky movie, but you know enough about the Rocky franchise, you would be totally shocked by the original Rocky because it is a movie that was made in 1977. It was it was made in sort of the period of time when directors were just making great art movies. It's slow paced. They take a lot of time on shots. The narrative arc moves very slowly until the very end, that moves very quickly and then ends abruptly. I mean, it's just staples of 70s filmmaking all over this film. Written by Stallone. It was his baby.
Oscar winner.
And it was a surprise to Katie. Katie was like, this was not what I was expecting, and she was shocked by the fact that it ended so soon.
Right. Yeah.
Even though it's a long movie.
It's one of the we'll just have to do a Rocky pod or something because it's one of those first franchises, probably one of the first franchises anyway, but it's one of the first franchises to completely kind of morph into something different. I'd say Fast and the Furious has done that. They've mastered it. It's gone from like a movie about street racers to basically super soldiers, and Rocky went from that, like you said, slow paced underdog story. It's always an underdog story, but by the time you got to Rocky 5, certainly they were doing things differently. But then they completely rebounded with Creed. I mean, it's so look, it's one of my favorite franchises, one of my favorite guys ever. So that's a big talking point. Yeah, won the Oscar, right? For the writer.
He's redoing 4. He's going to re-release director's cut of 4. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, you know what he's doing.
I think he's cutting out the robot.
He's tugging the robot out. Right, exactly. Taking the robot out.
Okay, let's get back on track here. So that's You Ought to Know. Let's go back to the Hornets. This week in Hornets, since we last took the air last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, the Hornets are 3-2. They've got wins over Indiana. They got a win over an Oklahoma City Thunder team that is rebuilding, an Indiana team that's kind of on the ropes. They're sort of caught in that middle area, the soft middle of the Eastern Conference. And then they got a win over Milwaukee, which would have been impressive, but Milwaukee decided to sit everyone. I mean, calling guys off the
Sure.
street to fill in for the ninth and 10th man in the rotation. So they also incurred a blowout loss to Boston and a heartbreaker at home versus Atlanta. My question to you, which we can take in a variety of different directions, is how do you feel right now about the Hornets?
Well, if they'd stop having people twist their ankles, you'd feel a whole lot better,
Right.
because every time they can't afford to lose anyone else. Now it looks like PJ Washington will recover quicker than some of those other folks, but
And McDaniels, who also had a scale.
oh, jeez, yeah, a face laceration. That's the worst kind. Second
Oh,
worst.
well, hold on.
Second worst.
Hold on. Yeah, come on.
Well, it's the
can think of,
moneymaker,
I
but
can
I
think
mean,
of
come
various
on.
places that are worse. I would
That's
rather
fair.
have a face
Top three at
laceration.
least. Top three at least.
Bottom of your foot? I mean, before we even get to the obvious areas, bottom of your foot? I don't want a
Yeah.
laceration on the bottom of my foot.
It's got to be foot, face, and then somewhere in the middle of those two, I'd say.
The
Would be
soft
the worst
middle.
laceration. Yes. But I mean, if you just, I don't know what to do with these teams that, no criticizing, but I don't know what to do with stuff like that anymore when they just sit. I've never seen this. I mean, the Hawks did the same thing. They had 7 players out. The Bucks had their entire team out. But if you look at it on the surface, one, I thought the Indiana win was pretty impressive because I think that was just after the Hayward injury, right? So they could have been reeling a little bit.
Well,
and
Hayward
they took advantage.
Hayward was injured in that game.
Okay. But they took advantage of a team that was after the Boston game, right? I'm mixing up my dates a little bit, but
I'll look it up.
they needed that Indiana win to kind of feel like they had bounced back enough from a previously bad loss. So that was good. And you're right. They took advantage of an Indiana team that is middling a little bit and trying to find their way, which is what they've continued to do. This Hawks game was actually the first one where you could point at and say, they should have won that game. They should have won that game, given that it was at home, given that the Hawks were without a lot of their superstars, and given that they had an 8-point lead with 5 minutes to go.
So the Indiana win came after the Brooklyn blowout. So it was
That's right.
The Indiana was the
Brooklyn, Boston,
creamy
Indiana,
center of a blowout Oreo.
Yeah.
Because Boston came after that. So, and Bridges' big performance in that one, 23 points, 10 rebounds in that win over Indiana. Several 20-point games for Bridges, who has honestly just done a fantastic job subbing in for Gordon Hayward. I mean, it was exactly what you wanted out of a young player. Hey, here's your opportunity. Next man up. Bridges steps up. 26 against Milwaukee, 23 against Atlanta, including that vicious yam sandwich. I mean, I can't say anything, but thankfully the Hornets didn't give up on Miles Bridges.
So if it's Miles or PJ, it's Miles, right?
Which is surprising. I mean, I think it's been a turn because I would have said, I think you're right, but I would have said PJ all last season.
Right.
And Miles was the person that was sort of on the outside looking in.
Maybe like a month ago too. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm asking. Like, are we to the point where it's like, maybe there's a little dip when the rest of these guys come back, but at least with Miles, he can give you some crazy play, some dunk that's going to fire up everyone else. And PJ's just been inconsistent to a point where it's like when he's bad, it's really, really, really bad. I mean, he's better on defense, I know, this season, but like some of these performances are just not difference makers.
Well, I think Bridges has been significantly better on defense, and he's giving you some things really all across the board, including a little bit more playmaking. It's not like Gordon Hayward level playmaking. That's really where the drop-off between Hayward and Bridges has been, is just playmaking, setting up other players. And obviously they have different games offensively, but defensively, Bridges has been a leader, and energy, he's been a leader, and just engagement, he's been a leader.
Yeah.
So, all of those things, I'm not sure you can say any of those things to that level about PJ Washington yet. So I don't want to give up on PJ because I probably would have given up on Bridges and traded him by now. And luckily the Hornets didn't.
And look, he's added the 3-point shot, which I think you legitimately have to guard against now with Miles Bridges. He does bring the energy, regardless of what's happening. He brings the energy on both ends, so that goes in his favor. I'm just hopeful that one of them, right, can lay claim to being a permanent fixture. I mean, I know they're not threatening to moving out, but at some point they're going to have to say, okay, who are we moving forward with? And now it feels like Miles.
I think you're right. I mean, they've got decisions to make in the offseason, and I think they're set up better this offseason than they have been in previous offseasons in that you've got young players that have put up a resume, including Monk. Like in years past, we've looked back and said, yeah, they've got young talent, but because of injuries, because of underperformance, like how do you move them? So I think they're going to have some options next season if they really want to make a run at the playoffs and put some pieces around Hayward and Ball. And so then it's like, okay, what do we do here with Rozier, with Graham, with Bridges? PJ stock might not be the highest, so maybe he ends up staying instead of going. A lot of things up in the air. That game against Atlanta was critical. Critical. You've got 20 plus games left to go, and the East is all over the place. I don't know. Maybe critical is even too high a word to put on that game. But because of the records, like they went from 4th in the Eastern Conference, losing that game, they went to 6th.
Yeah,
the Hawks and the Heat both jumped them. But they're only now a game back of the Hawks. They're only a half game back of the Heat. They've got a lot of home games. They're still 2 games above 500 at 27 and 25. I'm not really – they just started that game against Atlanta so poorly. So I ding them for that. I don't necessarily ding them for losing that game close because they've won so many close games this season. Right. It's like they earned one. In fact, during the game – they did an interview with Terry, or, they do these like game breaks, and they'll show interviews and things from the team. If you're watching on League Pass or other services.
What have you.
That mysterious services that somehow give you League Pass. You'll get these game breaks. And Terry Rozier was saying like, the reason, he's been so good in the clutch this season, he's not afraid to take the shot. He's not afraid to miss. Well, I mean, he missed. Yep. So, I mean, it's happened a couple of times, but you give him that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Malik Monk. I forgot about him and the people that they're missing and that they hope to, get back at some point. So you have to feel pretty good about that.
I mean, they've been struggling offensively. Like, I mean, the thing that the Hornets need is what Malik Monk was providing.
And they're in a pretty good situation with tiebreakers as well, right? I think they got one more game against the Hawks, I guess. But they've taken care of business.
I think they have it against the Heat. They've got it against I want to say the Knicks and the Pacers.
I think that's correct. They've taken care of business where they should have, and they kind of continue to do that. So you feel good about them being able to keep things steady until you start to get, a couple of these pieces back little by little, and they don't have any more long road trips, and a majority of their games are at home from here on out. So they've been pretty resilient. And look, that Atlanta game, yes, it was at home. It's a 1:00 game, never fun. And it was also the tail end of a pretty grueling road trip. I mean, they all are, but it was their last big road trip. So, that explains the slow start to some degree. And you saw them fight back. Like I said, they were up 8 points with 5 minutes to go.
I think you're right. And I think, they've got a game against LA coming up tonight, and they're going to be without their big stars, although they're a great defensive team even without AD and LeBron. So the Hornets have not been playing as well offensively. That's going to be interesting. I think it'll still be close with LA. Then they've got a game against Cleveland on Wednesday. Friday, they go to Brooklyn. Hopefully Brooklyn gets out of the way too, like some of these other big teams. Just, just take it easy against the Hornets.
We get it. We get it, guys.
And then, although they felt like they rested a few people, Kevin Durant wasn't playing in that last blowout loss, so they're just going to have to bring it regardless. Then Portland, New York, Chicago, Cleveland before you get into April 25th through the 28th, Boston, Milwaukee, Boston. That could be in terms of, are they a team that avoids the play-in? I feel like that Boston, Milwaukee, Boston is going to really, there's going to be some decisions made at that point. If you go 0-3 in that stretch, with how close everyone in sort of the second class of the Eastern Conference is, that feels like sort of a fulcrum point for how this season's going to go. And hopefully they can get a few guys back by then, but
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
but who knows?
Who knows? Things continue to, I guess. I mean, you hear positive things out of there. Like I said, PJ, hopefully, I know it's probable for the Lakers game. If you lose him, I mean, it just puts you in such a bind. I mean, Biz didn't play at all, and I don't think would have played in that Hawks game had PJ and McDaniels really gotten hurt at various points in that. So you got to try and get a few guys back, hopefully, and just keep doing what they're doing. I mean, this Lakers game is a perfect example. I mean, no LeBron, no AD. That's good. But obviously you can't afford to sleep on anyone. Look at the Hawks game. So you got to come out and play your A game. But I think the Hornets being at home, getting a little rest after that Hawks game, they feel good about going on a little run here if they can.
Real quick, David, what do you think about JB mixing up the lineup, getting Jalen McDaniels into the starting lineup, his performance, and then JB's decision to shake up the lineup?
I mean, I like it, Doug. I love it. How many years were we sitting here just saying, just give us a different look, try something else,
do something.
We know what this is. We know what it's going to produce. We know it's steady, if not exciting. But look, you've got a guy over there. First of all, you do need to find out who's a player at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And McDaniels has been so tantalizing with the length and the athleticism. So I like it. And that is what I like about JB. I mean, he's going to try things out. He's going to see if it works. I mean, it's still a gamble, and it paid off for him big time, especially now with a couple of big performances. But, what else can you do? I mean, who else are you going to throw out there?
Yeah, so he gets to start against Oklahoma City, goes 9 of 14 in 32 minutes. He has 6 rebounds, 3 assists to go along with 21 points, and then follows that up with 19, 5, and 6 in 31 minutes, 7 of 11. The most impressive thing is in the 3 games that he's played since he got the starting job, he's only had 1 turnover. It's such an odd thing in the NBA, and I mean, Daniels is certainly not the first example of this. Countless examples of guys who, in spot minutes, playing a little bit here, a little bit there, just look like they have no idea what's going on and can't really get in any groove and rhythm. And then somebody gets injured, or you get a shakeup, and they get consistent minutes, and the coach comes to them and says, look, you're the starter now. This is your role, 30 minutes. And suddenly they're playing at an all-star level. And that's what we've seen here from McDaniels.
Yeah, I mean, it's been not more than a week or two. I mean, the last time they were at home, he was playing in like mop-up duty, not playing at all.
Right.
And looking horrible, to your point,
right.
Doing it. I mean, not looking good at all. There was, I think it was the Kings, or there was a blowout game at home where he and a bunch of the other guys from the bench were playing. None of them looked good, and he looked the worst. So you look at that and you're like, oh my God, like this is a guy we may need to count on at some point. So yeah, it is fascinating to see that. It's nice to see, and he's had flashes before, but it's nice to see him come in and produce.
And it's opportunity, right? Because so much of the offense is missing right now. It's like somebody has to shoot it. Jalen McDaniels gets those opportunities, and he's cashing in on them. And hopefully, again, he can get back in this game against LA and kind of get back on track. He was 4 of 7 against Atlanta for 9 points, 2 assists and 3 rebounds. But again, he didn't. He looked a little like, okay, how's he feeling? What's the deal here? So we'll see if he can kind of get back on track for that one. But I agree with you. JB, I think right now, to me, he's got to be fighting in like a group of 3 coaches for Coach of the Year. I mean, I feel like it's him, it's Quinn Snyder. Anyone else you'd throw in there?
I was going to say Quinn.
Monty Williams, Suns head coach. I mean, there's a story there, obviously, some tragedy in his life that he's had to overcome. And he's done an amazing job, like just reorganizing that Suns team and getting them to really like, hey, you guys want to be a playoff team or what?
Right.
So
those are the top 3, I'd say. I mean, and JB certainly deserves to be in that category. If you have the Hornets as high as 4th as of recently, I mean, it's insane to think about. No one thought that.
And it's where the Hornets are. It's the injuries and it's the talent progression. Like the fact that there's so many players that people are talking about for the Charlotte Hornets, I think elevates his narrative. Like you got to have a narrative to win this Coach of the Year award. Well, and I think the narrative is significant for JB, and I think it's significant for Monty Williams too.
And this clutch narrative, right? I mean, up
Yeah,
until that Atlanta game, I mean, how they've
right.
been able to close out fourth quarters. Certainly some of that is the guys on the court, but I mean, you give credit to JB there as well for keeping things steady. So, yeah, I think there's more than enough ammunition for JB to be in that conversation.
Okay, let's move on. Time to talk about what we're watching on television. It's a segment we call the Content Corner. It's the Content Corner, the Content Corner. What we're watching, it's the Content Corner.
I love it.
What'd you think
We
about
need
that?
some sounds. We need some sounds for the content corner.
I just did it. I'm
I
gonna
know.
take that. I'm gonna strip it from the audio, and that's gonna be it. Okay, what are you, David? What are you watching this week? Anything that
Holy
people need
moly.
to know about?
Well, I'm still in a rewatch of Justified for some reason. I read 2 Elmore Leonard books in a row, and they
Wow.
both featured Raylan Givens, portrayed by Timothy Oliphant, and on the FX series Justified. It's a little pulpier, a little more FXy than I remembered, but some fun characters on there, some fantastic dialogue, and one of our favorites, Mr. Walton Goggins,
Oh yeah,
is
give me
just
some Goggins.
transformative. Is just transformative in the role of Boyd Crowder on that show. So a fun watch, especially looking back, having read those books. You can see where they sprinkled in some of the source material into the episodes of the show. So it's a fun one.
Classic example of a television series that started out as a procedural.
Yeah.
And then moved into like full. It caught this wave. There was a wave of narrative television being able to sell narrative television. And so Justified like tried to be a procedural in season 1 and then was like, oh wait, we can do narrative and be okay. And so then they did these long narrative arcs through the rest of the series and got away from the sort of monster of the week or bad guy of the week that the series started out in. So yeah, that's a fantastic show. Big recommend from me as well.
And they're talking about bringing the producers, the showrunner, FX, that they're going back to the Elmore Leonard well and doing another one of his books at FX. It's not confirmed that Oliphant would reprise his role as Raylan Givens, but it's possible. Now the story they were focusing on did not feature Raylan Givens, but I mean, come on.
If you didn't hear that sound, him in there. If you didn't hear that sound, it was me melting into my chair at the
anytime you get Oliphant being a marshal, whether it's there, whether it's Deadwood in the Old West, whether it's in a galaxy far, far away on Mandalorian, is there a better actor to role pairing? I can't find it.
No. Oliphant and a cool dude. Like if you catch him on an interview on a podcast, or I mean, he's just like he seems like one of the top three actors to get a beer with. I think he's on there.
Go look up. He did I think it was it Fallon or was it Conan? He
was on Conan's pod and he was really
Zoom
good.
Interview a couple of weeks back or a couple of months back in the pandemic where he was just having an absolute ball, mixing drinks on his end in the car in his house. So yeah,
in his car, that would be impressive and dangerous and probably
It wasn't driving.
Okay, I'm watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm still watching. Sure. I was hanging on by a thread heading into episode 4. This will be spoiler free, so don't worry. I won't spoil anything if you haven't caught up on it yet. But I just want to tell you that if you're on the fence, if you're like me and you were on the fence about this show, especially after watching WandaVision and how good that was, and you're like, this isn't really measuring up for me. I just want to tell you, hang on just a little bit longer. Get to episode 4. Things happen in episode 4, including the very end of the episode, that really make you feel like, okay, this could be going somewhere in a very interesting direction that I'm on board for. I think if you're like me and you're kind of I feel like I'm an average Marvel. I'm not I'm not a total Marvel geek. I have a love-hate relationship with superhero movies. I just like great content. So if you're like me, hang on till episode 4 because I think it could get really interesting. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I'm 2 behind, so I got to catch up. I really enjoyed the second episode, but I'm liking what they're doing. I mean, it's amazing. Disney Plus, Doug. Yes. I mean, they came out of the gate with some content in their back pocket, but what they've done is is incredible because you got this and another show I mentioned that I'm watching with the boys here, the Mighty Ducks TV show that they rolled out. I mean, it's just solid. It's a solid Mighty
Solid
Ducks show.
programming.
That IP is money. Emilio Estevez just rolling in there,
Emilio!
running it back. Lauren Graham is on the show, so I mean, it's fun. They're really killing it. I'm looking forward to finishing that up. I'm really looking forward to the Loki show as well.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just going to
That's-
keep churning this stuff out.
Tom Hiddleston was a highlight for me every time he was on screen in a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Even in a bad Marvel movie, I thought Loki was a high point. So I'm totally down for that.
Yeah, and you've got the Owen Wilson in that, so you feel like that will be some of the wow. You feel like you've got some of the humor coming in between those two, and how they're going to weave that in there together. Now, are you wanting to see the connective tissue between all this stuff? Do you want to see, the stuff that runs through WandaVision go to the big screen, get mentioned there, weave back through Winter Soldier and all that stuff?
It's fine. I just want a good movie. Like, I don't think that those things factor in when I think like, oh, was this great? Thinking about all the Easter eggs. I think there's a certain segment of the fan base that loves that stuff, and that's for them. I just want to see good character development, great writing, interesting plot turns, stuff blowing up.
Yeah, I'd like to see them take a chance more, one or two chances more than they are. Like, I think WandaVision particularly steered us down one road and threw us some red herrings where they could have done some more creative stuff.
They're held
Not
back
creative,
by Disney.
but
They're held back by Disney.
Exactly.
Let's be honest. Like,
Yeah.
if you watch,
Yeah.
I'll say even watching episode 4, I looked at Katie and I said, this is the closest that they could get to truly like Nolan level dark Batman, Like they're just, you can tell that I think there are writers that are writing for Falcon and Winter Soldier that are like, hey, man, we could push this. We could take it all the way to the gravel if we wanted to. But Disney.
But we've got 2 decades to fill with the rest of this stuff. So if there's a one downside for me right now, it appears that is the track they're on with all this stuff, right? Like, where are the stakes? Like, does anything ever truly final or I don't know. It's like, how big is all this stuff happening if it's just going to go on and on and on and on for the next 10, 20 years?
Real quick, before we get out of here, I want to tell you a crazy stat. I got this one from Sam Purley on Twitter.
Yeah.
At Sam_Purley. He works for Hornets.com. Great guy. He's been on Locked On Hornets a ton. Terry Rozier with 337 three-pointers made needs just 2. Needs a deuce of a 3 to pass Frank Kaminsky and Matt Carroll for 10th place on the franchise's all-time leaderboard. They both sit at 338. So Terry cruising up the charts for the Charlotte Hornets.
Wow, Matt Carroll, Frank Kaminsky did not come to mind when we were talking about dunks.
No dunks. Let's hand out some medals. I'd like to give a gold medal to the guy we've been talking about all show, Mr. Miles Bridges. Last 4 games played for Miles. This also comes from Sam Purley, by the way. He was our ghost researcher for this show. Last 4 games played for Miles, all starts, 18.8 points per game on 55.3% shooting. He was 44% from 3, which has been another thing, by the way, that Miles, consistency from the 3-point line. That was always, I said this like 1,000 times on Locked On Hornets. I'm like, if this dude could shoot a consistent 3-point shot when he was open, his game would completely change. And it has. I'm a genius. Why didn't he listen to me? 92.3% from the line, 5.8 rebounds per game. And again, this is where I was saying 2.8 assists per game. He's doing a little bit more playmaking, and that little bit has amounted to a lot for the Hornets. Gold medal.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. You look at what he, and like we mentioned it before, I mean, McDaniels, if they hadn't stepped up on that road trip, they may not have, closed it out.
Been 0-3.
3 and 4. So that's huge for him And, for what the team is trying to do overall, you got to build that depth and you got to have somebody step up. So I don't think that would have happened in previous years. Some real growth there.
Right. And well, that leads me right into my silver medal, which goes to Jalen McDaniels for coming out of nowhere and just rocking our worlds. Hopefully he does it again against Los Angeles. And then finally, a bronze medal. I'm going to give it to Brad Wanamaker for just being Brad Wanamaker and getting traded for cash and being cash. He's been cash money.
Those layups, no one's stopping those layups once he gets going, okay? Wanamaker is a pro. He's a professional basketball player, Doug. And, a share of that bronze medal should probably go to Mitch Kupchak, who, when that transaction was made, a lot of people were saying, what?
Well, it just seemed like a classic. People were doing like the classic Jordan thing, trading for cash. Here we
go. Oh my God, I did see that. It's like MJ's favorite trade. He just wants more money.
He just loves money.
Yeah. The billionaire. He's just looking for little moves to pad the bottom line just a little bit. Maybe he is, but Wanamaker was not good in Golden State. But where he was pretty solid was the Boston Celtics. Yes. And particularly, he was not bad in the bubble at all. So good for Wanamaker for coming in and just being that steady hand. You got to have someone who's going to do that. And thank God they got him. I mean, honestly, when Monk went down, what would we have been doing if Wanamaker had been out there?
Fortune teller.
We'll not get a lot of credit. Honestly, we probably won't get a lot of credit for that anywhere else. But here, we love you, Mitch. We love you, baby. But great move there.
We calling people baby now?
Come on, baby.
All right. Thanks for hanging with us here for an hour. We'll be back next week. We're making it up as we're. I'm going to do that again.
Yeah,
we're making it up as we go along, and it's only getting better. For David, I'm Doug saying, "Go Hornets, go America. Let's swarm Charlotte."